This is going to be my book talk on a book called All the Broken Pieces. This book is by Anne Berg. It is historical fiction and also poetry. It is a book that takes place in the United States during the Vietnam War. And so, as you may know, the conflict that happened with Vietnam caused a lot of our country to be divided and caused a lot of conflicts within the country. People weren't as supportive. And so the main character of my book, Matt Pinn, really gets caught up in the middle of this conflict going on between Vietnam and the United States because he was born in Vietnam, but then he ends up being brought to the United States. And what happens is his mother decides that he doesn't have a good life there in Vietnam, and there are opportunities for him to get to the United States. And so she decides that she's going to give him up and sacrifice him so that he can have a better life here in the United States. And so while it's a very difficult choice for her, she decides that she can put him into the arms of this U.S. soldier, and this soldier will bring him to the United States, and he will have an opportunity at a better life. And so Matt is basically transported, as a young child from Vietnam here to the U.S., where he's adopted by a family here who already has one child, but they're really excited about getting Matt, and they work really hard to try and get him to fit in and to start a good life here, and there's a lot working against them, in this situation, but they definitely do their best, and they seem to really love him. One thing that they're really struggling with is the fact that the country itself does not support Matt being here because he's Vietnamese. And so a lot of the country's protesting the war in general and protesting our involvement in Vietnam. And so Matt ends up really bearing the brunt of that, even in his personal life, even at school. And so his dad's really working hard to try and find him a place where he can fit in. And so what he finds is that Matt is a really good pitcher. And so he gets him a place on this baseball team. And so on the baseball team, Matt starts to make a couple friends. He connects with the coach, who's a really good guy, and really wants Matt to fit in. And so he finally, I think, starts to feel like he's fitting in and like things are going well for him. And so, things are starting to turn around. However, it is still, a team made up of teenagers. And so there's a boy on the team who really does not like Matt. And the reason he doesn't like him is because his brother was a soldier in Vietnam and he was killed there. And so he hates everything to do with the war, which means he hates Matt. And so he starts really bullying Matt and making his life miserable through racist comments and taking jabs at him on the team. And so that conflict starts to become a big problem for Matt. And the coach decides, I can't have this going on my team, so I'm going to come up with a resolution for you. And what I'm going to do is have you play this game where you kind of have to trust each other and open up to each other. And so he blindfolds one of them, and then he blindfolds the bully kid, and then he has to trust Matt enough to give him directions to find some objects. And at first he won't trust him at all. He refuses to work with him. And then Matt decides to open up to him about his brother, who stepped on a landmine in Vietnam and lost both his arms and his legs. And so he kind of opens up to this bully so that he understands that they are actually, kind of coming from the same place. And so they kind of start to make peace, and they go to this support group where everyone kind of gets a chance to talk about all of the things that they're feeling about the war and about how the war has impacted them. And so that really helps them kind of both work through their problems and be able to find peace. And so that was just a really positive experience for both of them. The book is called All the Broken Pieces by Anne Berg. And I think this is a great book for kids who really like war books, because I think it talks about the Vietnam War, which is a war a lot of people don't know much about. I think that's great. I also think that just kids who like books about teenagers and what it's like to be a teenager. Matt's got these kind of crazy circumstances, but at the same time, he's just like every other kid. He just wants friends. He just wants to feel loved by his family. He wants to, find something he's good at and get to do it, and so I think that really, speaks to any teenager, boy, girl, anything. There's some baseball in it, so if you're a baseball fan, you probably enjoy that aspect of it as well. It is poetry, so it's a short, quick read, but it has a lot of really strong, vivid detail because of the poetry. So I really recommend it to anyone who would actually be interested in reading it. All the Broken Pieces by Anne Berg.